My name is Mark Dawson. At 38, I'd been married to my high school sweetheart Jenna for 18 years. Our daughter, Emily, was a 15-year-old high schooler. I'm built solidly, standing at 6'1" and weighing about 210 pounds, most of which is muscle from over 15 years working as an electrician. Formal education was never my strong suit, but I had a knack for hands-on, practical work. After graduating high school, I entered an apprenticeship to become an electrician. Within 5 years, I'd passed the necessary exams to become a journeyman, and by the time I was 25, I had earned my master's license. While I'm not lacking in intelligence, my preference has always been for tangible work rather than academic study. My dream was to launch my own company, but Jenna valued the security of my position at Apex Electrical Services, especially since we had a young child and she was a stay-at-home mother. The job afforded us a comfortable existence. Our home and vehicles were fully paid for, we enjoyed regular vacations, and financial worries were non-existent. I believed our life was a happy one. Alex, my closest friend since elementary school, had become a thriving entrepreneur after getting his degree from Princeton, followed by an MBA. Despite his financial success, he was single and a frequent guest for dinner at our house. He often expressed envy for the family life I had, remarking that his wealth couldn't buy the love and connection he saw in my home. I always shared his sentiment. I adored Jenna, and Emily was the center of my universe. We had a strong bond, and I had even started teaching her some of the basics of electrical work, though my aspirations for her future were much greater. Then, one evening in October, my entire world came undone. Coming home from a late job, I noticed Alex's car parked in our driveway. This wasn't out of the ordinary, as he often joined us for dinner. However, when I entered the house, Emily, who usually met me at the door with a hug, was nowhere to be seen. It was the first sign that something was wrong. When I asked Jenna about her, she claimed to be at her friend Jessica's place. The strange expressions on both Jenna and Alex's faces signaled that something was amiss. When Jenna uttered the dreaded words, "We have to talk," my stomach dropped. I had just come from a grueling day at an outdoor site and needed to clean up, so I asked for a few minutes. In the shower, my mind raced through possibilities. Could Jenna be pregnant? We hadn't discussed having more children, but a recent intimate moment made the timing plausible. This could explain her serious demeanor, and the thought of another child was one I would have welcomed. But that didn't explain Alex's presence. Perhaps she had confided in him first, seeking advice on how to break the news to me. Then a darker thought emerged. Maybe someone was gravely ill. I had no other family. A car accident had claimed my father when I was just a boy of 12, and my mother passed away a decade after. Their own marriage had ended in a painful divorce, a result of my mother's infidelity and my father's struggle to cope, which cast a long shadow over my youth. Could the issue involve Jenna's family, her parents, or her sister Lisa? I even briefly considered that the problem might be with Jenna or Alex themselves, but I dismissed the idea, thinking I would have noticed any signs sooner. With no other plausible explanation, I went downstairs to confront the situation. I initially failed to notice that Jenna and Alex were seated together on the sofa, while I was left to sit alone on the armchair. Jenna began by expressing her appreciation for me, but her words soon devolved into a confession. She and Alex had developed feelings for each other and were in love. She wanted a divorce. The words struck me with the force of a physical blow. I was rendered speechless, unable to process what I was hearing.
Jenna pressed on, expressing her hope that we could handle the separation amicably for Emily's sake, to minimize the disruption to her life. When I finally found my voice, I asked the question I dreaded. Had she slept with him? A faint, wry smile was her answer, a confirmation that felt like a knife twisting in my back. "Yes, I have, Mark," she said. I was reeling, struggling to comprehend the betrayal. We had been a couple for over 2 decades, more than half of my life. I had always held the belief that our bond was unbreakable, that there was no issue we couldn't resolve. Now I was adrift, desperate for answers, trying to pinpoint where our life together had gone so terribly wrong. Alex tried to interject, which finally broke my stupor. "Mark, listen." "No!" I yelled, my own voice startling me. "You will never address me again, you treacherous snake. Let me be perfectly clear, Alex. If you ever utter another word to me, I'll ensure it's your last, and I would gladly spend the rest of my days in a cell for it. Acknowledge that you understand." He gave a slight nod. Alex was all business suits and no brawn. I knew I could easily overpower him if I chose to. "There's no reason to behave this way," Jenna pleaded. "Mark, let's please try to be civil." "Civility is not an option when I'm the one being betrayed and discarded," I retorted. "To hell with your ideas of how I should react." I spat in her direction. "And I'm getting full custody of my daughter, not you." "Mark, I understand you're hurt, but I won't give up custody of Emily," Jenna stated firmly. "We can arrange a fair visitation plan so you can have plenty of time with her, but she'll live with us to keep her life as stable as possible. You work demanding hours, and I'll be home." "Forget that," I shot back, my words sharp with fury. "You don't get it at all. She's my daughter too. I didn't spend the last 18 years breaking my back to provide for my family only to be relegated to a weekend dad because the woman I married decided to upgrade to someone with a larger bank account. I suppose that's why he never settled down. He always had his sights set on you." "This has nothing to do with money, Mark," she retorted. "The reality is we probably should have never married. I thought I was in love, but we were just teenagers. I married you because it was expected after being together for so long. I tried to be a devoted wife, but as I got older, I realized I wanted something more, and I discovered that with Alex. This wasn't planned, he was just always there, and we connected. Frankly, it's surprising you never saw how well we got along." That's when I noticed their intertwined hands. "Oh, I noticed," I said coldly. "I just had misplaced faith in my wife and my best friend. It never occurred to me that the two people I trusted most would conspire to stab me in the back. You've done enough damage. If you contest custody, the gloves are coming off. Understand?" "Then I suppose the gloves are off," Jenna replied. "I'm sorry it has to be this way. It could have been so much simpler." "Whatever," I scoffed. "Forgive me for making your betrayal inconvenient for you, you witch. The two of you need to leave my house now. I didn't work myself to the bone to pay for this home just for you to tell me I'm not good enough anymore. I'm sure Mr. Moneybags has a fancy bachelor pad you can move into." "Fine," Jenna said, her voice strained. "Most of my things are already at his place anyway." That remark stung. "I'll get the rest of my things and we'll leave. For what it's worth, Mark, I am sorry." They were gone before I could respond to her hollow apology. I sat in stunned silence on the couch for half an hour as they gathered their belongings from the bedroom. Alex left with a single suitcase, and Jenna followed, pausing for a moment at the door before leaving without another word.
When Emily returned home, I recounted the events, carefully avoiding any harsh language about her mother or Uncle Alex. I held on to the belief that my bond with Emily was strong enough that she would choose to stay with me. At 15, her preference would be a significant factor in any custody arrangement, and I trusted her love for me. I retained a lawyer, fully prepared for a difficult fight, although he warned me the legal precedent was not in my favor. Alimony was a strong possibility until Jenna and Alex married, and child support would be determined by Emily's living arrangements. I was confident I wouldn't have to pay. At the court hearing 3 weeks later, Jenna waived her right to alimony, citing Alex's higher income and their plans to marry. I couldn't bring myself to look at her during the proceedings. The judge met with Emily privately for an hour. When she emerged, her eyes were red with tears. I assumed she was feeling guilty about her decision. The judge then granted the divorce, to be finalized in 90 days. Jana had waived alimony and any claim to our joint savings, which I retained. However, the judge awarded full custody to Jana, reasoning that it would allow Emily to remain in her current school and maintain a stable environment. I was floored. Emily had chosen her mother over me. My world had been built on a foundation of lies. I had misjudged everything, believing my family's love was real. This felt like a cruel repeat of my past, being used and then cast aside. Now, they had found a supposedly better option in Alex. The judge's words about equity and visitation schedules were just a dull roar in my ears. All I could focus on was the profound betrayal from the three people who had meant everything to me. My lawyer's attempts to console me were futile. I stumbled out into the hallway in a daze. I was vaguely aware of Emily hugging me, whispering "Daddy," but I was too numb to respond. The betrayal from Jana, Alex, and now Emily felt absolute. I had no one. Jana approached me with an expression of pity, promising that I would still see Emily and insisting this was for the best. Alex, to his credit, kept his distance. "I guess you won and I lost," I said, my voice flat. "I'll be gone by the end of the week." Mistaking my meaning, she replied, "There's no rush, Mark. Take all the time you need. We can stay at the condo for a while. I truly hope we can move past this and learn to coexist. You still mean a lot to me." I turned to face her, my voice laced with venom. "Don't patronize me. If I meant anything to you, this never would have happened. As I said, I'll be gone by the end of the week. Take your daughter and leave me alone." "She's our daughter, Mark," she corrected. "She'll see you next weekend." "No," I growled. "She made her choice. She chose you. Goodbye, Jana." I turned and walked away, never looking back. Claire. Tom put his condominium on the market right after the hearing, anticipating a swift sale. Most of his possessions were already packed, ready to be moved into the house Mark and I had shared as soon as Mark vacated. Our primary goal was to maintain stability for Emily, as Tom's condo was located in a different school district. Tom and I had never intended for this to happen. We fell in love despite our efforts to resist. Hurting Mark was never part of the plan, but our feelings for each other became too powerful to ignore. Our first intimate encounter occurred when Mark was away on an overnight job, a moment that confirmed we were meant to be together. In the weeks that followed, we met secretly twice more before we finally confessed to Mark. My love for Tom deepened with each passing day. During that time, it was difficult to fend off Mark's advances, as my loyalty had shifted entirely to Tom. We knew Mark would be devastated, but we hoped he would eventually recover. We never anticipated the way things would ultimately unfold. Mark communicated with me only through his lawyer. He was scheduled to pick up Emily at 4 p.m. one afternoon, but by 4:30 he had not appeared. His phone was disconnected, and I was unable to reach his attorney. Worried, I took Emily to the house. When we arrived, it was eerily empty. Mark's belongings were gone, though Emily's room was untouched. On the kitchen counter, I found a cashier's check for the full amount of child support, covering all expenses until Emily's graduation. A knock at the door made me jump. I hoped it was Mark, but it was our neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. She told me she hadn't seen Mark for several days. He had moved all of his belongings onto the front lawn, and a charity truck had come to collect them, likely the day after our divorce hearing. When I inquired if he had left any forwarding information, she asked Emily to step outside for a moment. With a growing sense of dread, I prepared myself for bad news. Mrs. Henderson then relayed the message Mark had left for me. He said if you asked where he was, to tell you he'd see you in hell. The words hit me, and tears streamed down my face as the full weight of the situation set in. Mark was gone for good. He had prepaid his child support, given away his possessions, cut off his phone,
and vanished without a trace. I had assumed he meant he was just leaving the house, not our lives entirely. When he had referred to Emily as your daughter, I had attributed it to anger, not a final severing of our connection. After Mrs. Henderson left, Emily came back inside and saw me crying. I had no choice but to tell her the truth. Her father had left. She reacted with fury, blaming me for his departure, for my infidelity, and for destroying our family. She collapsed in tears, and I held her, apologizing, though I knew words were insufficient to heal the wound. We sat on the floor, weeping together for what seemed like an eternity, but was only a few minutes. Eventually, we drove back to Tom's condo in silence. Emily retreated to her room, her sobs echoing through the apartment. Tom asked what had happened, and I relayed the entire story. Mark's donation of his belongings, the disconnected phone, the child support check, and the cruel message left with our neighbor. I confessed my fear that Mark might do something drastic. Leaning against Tom, I struggled to process the enormity of it all. I never would have believed he'd react this way. He's always been the one who could handle a crisis. I remember one night in high school, we were being reckless, mashing beer bottles outside the school, and the police showed up. We all scattered, but he knew we wouldn't all get away. He calmly put himself in harm's way so the rest of us could escape. When we asked him the next day why, he said it was the only logical choice. The police needed to catch someone, and since he was the only one with a minor record, he figured they'd stop looking for the rest of us once they had him. He sacrificed himself for us. It was a perfectly logical decision to him. I knew he'd be hurt by this, but I was sure he'd understand, and that we'd somehow move on. There's nothing we can do now but wait for him to turn up. Mark. My skills as an electrician meant I could find work anywhere, even while staying under the radar. I closed all my credit card accounts, converted my assets to cash, and drove 3 states away before they could even realize the house was completely empty. I found a job with a local contractor who paid me in cash. The rate was lower than I deserved, but I didn't mind. I didn't need much money and simply wanted to stay occupied. The contractor asked if I was on the run. I told him I wasn't, just trying to avoid being found. He seemed to understand, mentioning his own difficult divorce, which brought a fleeting smile to my face. I lived out of my car, using truck stops to shower and shave. Though I could have afforded a motel room, I avoided any transaction that required my name.
I doubted they were actively searching for me, especially with the child support taken care of, but I wasn't taking any chances. As the weather grew colder, I found a room for rent. The owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Gable, was willing to accept cash payments without a formal lease. She didn't need the income, but was looking for companionship and some help with repairs around her mobile home. In exchange for my help and for staying off the books, I would have a place to stay a few nights a week. It seemed like a fair arrangement, so I agreed. Claire. Our divorce became official in early February, just a few days before Emily's 16th birthday. She held out hope that her father would make contact, but the day came and went with no word from him. That night, I was heartbroken to hear her crying herself to sleep. I went to the bedroom I now shared with Tom, a room that had once been Mark's and mine. Tom was reading, as he often did. I couldn't comprehend how Mark could completely cut off his daughter, seemingly abandoning her simply because she had chosen to live with us. Tom admitted he was also surprised and suggested that we had both underestimated the depth of Mark's pain. He reminded me, however, that we couldn't let this consume us. We needed to move forward and consider counseling for Emily to help her process her feelings. I agreed. With Mark gone, it was up to us to support her through her grief. Mark. My arrangement with Mrs. Gable lasted for nearly 4 years, a quiet routine of work and solitude. Most evenings I stayed in with her, with no desire to socialize or meet anyone new. It was March, and I had quietly observed my 42nd birthday 2 months prior. Despite my efforts to suppress them, thoughts of my past would occasionally surface. My ex-wife was also approaching 42, and her 4-year anniversary with Tom was coming up. I had seen their wedding announcement online and had gotten drunk that day. I was also aware that my daughter was about to turn 19 and would be graduating from high school in a few months. Fleeting thoughts of her college ambitions would enter my mind, but I quickly pushed them aside. My only desire was to numb the memories of those who had betrayed me. Claire. Emily had been driving since she was 17. On her 19th birthday, we bought her a new car. Seeing it in the driveway, we felt comfortable letting her take some friends to the city for the day. We had accepted that we would likely never hear from her father again, but a small part of us still held out a glimmer of hope on these special occasions. Yet, once again, the day passed without contact. Emily. It was graduation day. As I sat with my 412 classmates, I cried quiet tears for the life that could have been. My parents should have been there together, married, watching me cross the stage, a moment we had talked about for years. It felt selfish, but I couldn't suppress my sadness. My mother seemed content now, having built a new life with Tom. They clearly loved each other, perhaps more than she had ever loved my father. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that none of this should have happened. I scanned the crowd and saw my mother and Tom, who waved when they caught my eye. Nearby, I saw Jessica's parents, who had been a great support to me after the divorce. They had always encouraged me to understand the pain my father must have felt, even if they didn't agree with his actions. I was grateful for their presence, even though they were primarily there for their own daughter. As I looked around at the familiar faces, one suddenly stood out. Near the back of the auditorium, a man with longish hair and glasses caught my attention. I stood up to get a better look, but in that instant he was gone. I told myself it must have been my imagination. Claire. The next few years passed uneventfully. Despite consulting fertility specialists, Tom and I were unable to conceive a child.
I would have loved to have a child with him, but it wasn't in the cards for us. We were happy together, though we both carried regrets about the fallout from our choices. Emily was on the verge of graduating from a well-regarded state university with plans to pursue a career in education. She had started dating a young man named Ethan, and they seemed to be a perfect match. As these significant moments in Emily's life occurred, my thoughts would invariably drift to Mark. 8 years had passed without a single word from him. We had contacted his lawyer once, but were told there were no messages from Mark, and even if the lawyer knew his whereabouts, he was not at liberty to disclose them. I found a small measure of comfort in knowing that we had never been notified of his death, which allowed me to believe he was still alive somewhere. I often found myself wondering about the life he had built and whether he had ever moved past the hurt I had caused him. Mark. I continued to live a quiet life, still working as an electrician and maintaining my physical fitness. One day I walked into a local diner for lunch, a place I hadn't visited in a while. Gail, the owner, a woman in her 60s, had become a confidant over the years. When I arrived, she directed me to a booth instead of my usual seat at the counter. The reason soon became clear when my server approached, a beautiful woman in her mid-30s, tall, slim, and blonde. Her name tag read Chloe. We exchanged glances throughout my meal, and there was an undeniable spark between us. When her shift ended, Chloe wished me a good day, a gesture she hadn't extended to other customers. I took it as a sign and asked her to dinner. She smiled and accepted. After she left, I asked Gail for more details. Chloe, who was 34, had a 9-year-old daughter named Olivia. Her husband had left her for her best friend, and she had moved to the area for a fresh start. It was clear that Gail had played matchmaker, believing we would be a good fit. I arrived for our date early, with a bouquet of flowers, feeling both nervous and excited.
Chloe appeared at 6 p.m. sharp, looking radiant in a white floral dress and pink heels. We complimented each other, and the connection we felt was immediate and powerful. Walking to the Oak Barrel Steakhouse, our arms linked, felt completely natural. Over dinner at a cozy booth, Chloe told me she appreciated her job at the diner because the schedule allowed her to be there for her daughter, Olivia. When she asked if I had children, I hesitated before saying no, a conscious decision to distance myself from my past. Chloe explained that any man in her life would need to be prepared to take on a fatherly role for Olivia. I reassured her that I liked children, though a fleeting image of Emily crossed my mind. I admitted that I was divorced, but kept the details to a minimum. After dinner, Chloe asked to be dropped off back at the restaurant. She explained that she wasn't ready for Olivia to meet a new man until she was certain about our relationship. I respected her decision and told her we could take things at her pace. She couldn't see me the following night, but invited me for breakfast, an offer I gladly accepted. 2 nights later, we went to a country western bar and danced the night away. She turned down offers from other men, focusing her attention solely on me, a stark and refreshing contrast to my past with Jenna. Our connection deepened, and the night ended with a passionate kiss before we headed back to my place. Back at the boarding house, we shared a meaningful and intimate night together. Afterwards, I insisted on driving her home to ensure her safety. We shared a long, lingering kiss before parting. The next time we had dinner, I brought a green teddy bear for Olivia, who accepted it with delight. She proudly showed me her collection of stuffed animals, and Chloe and I shared a quick, affectionate kiss. Olivia's vibrant energy filled the evening, reminding me of Emily at that age and stirring up old emotions that I quickly suppressed. After dinner, Chloe and I sat on the couch, holding hands and talking, while Olivia played with her stuffed animals, including her new friend, Bobby, the green teddy bear. It was a simple, heartwarming evening. Suddenly, Olivia stopped playing and looked directly at me. "Are you going to be my new daddy?" she asked. I gently explained that while her mother and I were still getting to know each other, marriage was not something we had discussed yet. I assured her that we would be spending a lot of time together as a family, but that there would also be times when it was just her mother and me. Olivia seemed satisfied with my answer and returned to her ice cream. As we ate, painful memories resurfaced, and I had to fight back tears. Chloe noticed, but didn't say anything. Later, Olivia asked me to read her a bedtime story, a request that I was honored to fulfill. On the couch afterward, Chloe praised me for how I had handled Olivia's questions. She then invited me to stay the night, with the understanding that I would leave before Olivia woke up. I agreed, and we spent another deeply intimate night together. Despite my lingering fears, being with Chloe felt like a second chance at love. After our night together, she checked on Olivia, who was fast asleep with her new teddy bear. I dressed quietly and left feeling grateful for how things were unfolding and hopeful for the first time in a long time. Sheila. I was relaxing in Mark's bed. Olivia was at a sleepover, and I had the day off. Mark had left for work early that morning after we had spent a wonderful night together. We had been together for nearly a year now, and I was completely in love. I was certain he felt the same way and was expecting a proposal any day. After showering, I found myself looking around Mark's room. We usually stayed at my apartment because of Olivia, so I hadn't spent much time here alone. The room was Spartan: a small desk, a filing cabinet, a microwave, a hot plate, and a queen-sized bed. As I glanced around, I noticed a file box tucked away in the corner of his closet. It piqued my curiosity, as I knew it contained items from the period of his life before he moved to our town, a part of his past he never spoke of. Torn between respecting his privacy and my desire to know more about the man I planned to marry, I decided to take a quick look. Inside, I found his marriage certificate and divorce decree. This didn't surprise me, but what did was the discovery that he had a daughter named Emily who would now be around 23. This meant she was only 15 when her parents divorced. I was stunned. Mark had told me he didn't have any children. The rest of the documents seemed standard, but this revelation left me with a whirlwind of questions. I even found a phone number for his ex-wife, Jenna. I carefully placed everything back in the box, unsure of what to do next. I thought perhaps Gail, who had known Mark for years, might be able to offer some insight. I decided I would talk to her. The next morning, I went to work early and asked Gail what she knew about Mark's past before he moved here. She reacted with concern, advising me to leave it alone and trust that Mark was a good man who would take care of me. Despite her advice, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed answers, especially after learning about the daughter he had never mentioned. The thought consumed me for the rest of the day. When Mark came in for breakfast, I did my best to act normal, but my mind was racing. After my shift, I went back to my apartment to sort through my thoughts. The more I considered it, the more I realized I needed to understand why Mark would leave his daughter behind. As a mother myself, it was a difficult concept to grasp.
Olivia adored Mark, and he treated her as his own. But if he could abandon one child, could he do it again? I couldn't risk my daughter's heart without knowing the full story. Her well-being had to come first, before my own happiness. Since neither Mark nor Gail would give me any answers, I knew there was only one option left. Claire. A call from a private number appeared on my phone. Though I was used to receiving telemarketing calls, I answered, a sliver of hope in my heart that it might be Mark. When the voice on the other end asked for Jenna Dawson, my former married name, I almost hung up, assuming it was a sales call. But there was an uncertainty in her voice that made me pause. The caller introduced herself as Chloe and told me she was dating my ex-husband. I was shocked, frozen in place, unable to process the unexpected news. For years, I had rehearsed what I would say if someone ever contacted me about him. But now that the moment had arrived, I couldn't find the words. After a brief pause to collect myself, I continued the conversation. Chloe confirmed she was dating Mark and understood my surprise, acknowledging that I hadn't heard from him in 8 years. She said he was doing well, but wouldn't tell me his location, sensing he wouldn't want her to share that information. She admitted to having done some snooping, as Mark had never opened up to her about his past. It stung to hear that he had built a new life, even found a girlfriend, yet still refused to acknowledge our shared history. "Of course, I understand," I said. "I'm glad to hear he's doing well. He's a good man, Chloe. He didn't deserve what I did to him." "If you don't mind my asking, Jenna, what exactly did you do to him?" "I'm not surprised he didn't tell you," I replied. "To be brief, we were together for over 20 years, married for 18, and I divorced him for his best friend, a man he had known since childhood. It sounds awful when I say it like that." "Wow," Chloe said. "My husband did the same thing to me. He left me for my best friend. Small world, isn't it? We weren't together as long as you were, though, but that doesn't explain why he would leave the way he did. People get divorced for all sorts of reasons, even reasons like yours, but they don't just abandon their children. There has to be more to the story." "There is," I confessed, and I proceeded to explain the events that led to Mark's departure. I don't think he saw it as abandoning his daughter. In his mind, she had already left him by choosing to live with me and Alex. In fact, right after the divorce hearing, he referred to her as your daughter and said he'd be gone in a week, but I didn't fully grasp what he meant at the time. "I can't condone his actions, but I understand them a bit better now," Chloe said. I hesitated, not wanting to stir up trouble, but I felt this was my only chance. "Chloe, I know you don't owe me anything, and this isn't about me. Emily is getting married soon. She's tried to cope with the fact that her father hasn't contacted her since she was 15, not even for a birthday. Now, with her wedding approaching, she's heartbroken that he won't be there to walk her down the aisle, a moment she's dreamed of since she was a little girl. If there's anything you can do, any influence you have over him." Chloe remained calm and thoughtful. She considered my request and responded with a sensibility that I admired, especially given that she was the one with something to lose. "I understand what you're asking, Jenna. If I bring this up, he might leave me and disappear again. He's a skilled tradesman. He can find work anywhere, and he's not struggling for money. I wouldn't even know how to begin that conversation, let alone convince him to come." "Of course, I understand," I said. "Maybe it's best to let it be. Chloe, thank you so much for calling me. Please keep my number."
I would be so grateful if you could occasionally update me on how he's doing. It would bring me some comfort to know that he has moved on with his life. "I'll keep your number," Chloe replied, "but I can't make any promises beyond that. I hope you understand." After the call, I immediately phoned Alex to tell him what had happened. "Did you get her contact information? Anything we can use?" he asked. "No," I said. "Her number was blocked, and she didn't give me her last name. But maybe this is a small step in the right direction." Sheila. I hung up the phone feeling a mix of relief and uncertainty. I had the information I needed, but now I had to decide what to do with it. Jenna was right. I didn't owe her or her daughter anything. Why should I risk my relationship with Mark for them? But this wasn't about them. It was about me and Olivia. If I were in their position, I would want someone to help, especially for my daughter's sake. I couldn't shake the fear that Mark might abandon Olivia just as he had Emily. I needed to understand if his past actions were a result of circumstance or a fundamental part of his character. I made a difficult decision, knowing it could jeopardize everything. Mark needed to confront his past and face Emily. If I was going to trust him with my daughter's heart, he had to address what he had done, not keep it buried. The next day, I called Jenna again. She was surprised to hear from me, but agreed to help. I asked for Emily's phone number and made Jenna promise to keep Mark's location a secret. She understood and gave me the number after preparing Emily for my call. After a moment of hesitation, I nervously dialed the number, ready to speak to Mark's daughter for the first time, knowing it would be a difficult conversation. "Good afternoon. This is Emily Dawson. Is this Chloe?" "Yes, it is. Your mother must have explained the situation." "She did, and she made it clear that anything you tell me about my father should remain between us. I'm sorry it has to be this way, but I understand. I'm ready to do whatever is necessary." "You'll need to fly into the city airport as soon as possible," I told her. "I'll pick you up and take you to your dad. You can stay with me while you're here, and we'll see how things unfold." "Can I ask you something?" Emily inquired. "Why are you risking your relationship for me? You don't even know me." "That's a fair question, Emily," I said. "I was in your shoes once, and my daughter is in a similar position now. Some things are too important to ignore. I need to know the man I plan to marry, and I want him to make things right with you." While we were on the phone, Emily booked a flight to the city for the following day. She emailed me her itinerary, and I told her I would pick her up myself. Now all I could do was wait. Mark. When I returned home from work exhausted, I was pleasantly surprised to find Chloe waiting for me, completely naked. I pulled her into my arms and kissed her passionately, all other thoughts momentarily erased from my mind. We spent an incredible, intimate night together. I briefly wondered about the special occasion, but decided not to question it. My love for Chloe was overwhelming, stronger than anything I had ever felt, even with Jenna. In some ways, it helped me understand Jenna's decision, though it didn't lessen the pain of the betrayal. As I dropped Chloe off at her apartment, I felt the engagement ring in my pocket, almost ready to propose, but I wanted the moment to be perfect, so I held off. When she closed the door, her expression seemed bittersweet, and I hoped everything was all right. Sheila. After dropping Olivia at school, I drove to the airport to meet Emily.
At baggage claim, I held up a sign with her name and scanned the crowd. Despite the number of people, I recognized her instantly when she smiled and walked toward me.
We exchanged a few pleasantries, and she expressed her eagerness to see her father after 8 years. We drove back to Crestwood, the small town where Mark and I lived. Before we reached the town, I pulled over and called Diane, Mark's dispatcher, to find out where he was working. She told me he was at the hardware store on Elm and 2nd, and jokingly reminded me of a past encounter in the back of Mark's truck, which made me blush. Emily caught on and teased me lightly. As we approached the store, I spotted Mark's truck. I instructed Emily to wait a few feet back while I positioned myself near the driver's side door. After about 20 minutes, we heard Mark's voice, and I knew the moment we had both been waiting for was about to happen. Mark. After finishing an electrical repair in the restroom, I headed out to complete my last 2 calls before returning to Chloe and Olivia. I had the ring with me, still waiting for the perfect moment to propose, though I knew I might have to create that opportunity myself. As I walked toward my truck, I saw Chloe's car parked behind it, and her standing near the door. I reached for the ring box in my pocket, thinking this could be the moment. But then I saw someone else, Emily. Seeing her brought back a flood of emotions, the pain of betrayal, the fear of what her sudden appearance might mean, and anger toward Chloe for orchestrating this meeting. I greeted Emily with a flat tone, acknowledging her presence before turning to Chloe, realizing she must have discovered my past and arranged this. Trying to suppress the rising emotions, I quickly stated that I had more work to do, threw my tools in the truck, and prepared to leave. "Daddy, I'm getting married." "Is that right?" I replied coldly. "Congratulations." I paused, unable to contain the anger burning inside me. "Just try not to become a cheating whore like your mother." With that, I got into my truck and shut the door. But it wasn't over. Emily was now at my window, banging on it with her fists. "I saw you. I know you still love me and care about me because I saw you," she yelled. I rolled down the window. "What are you talking about, Emily?" "My high school graduation," she said. "You were in the back, trying not to be seen, but it was you. That's how I know you still love me." "I don't know what you think you saw, Emily, but it sure as hell wasn't me," I lied. I started the truck and pulled away. Damn it. I knew I should have gotten rid of those mementos, but I had held on to them, just in case. Now my past had come back to haunt me. It was clear that one betrayal wasn't enough. I drove for 10 minutes before pulling over to collect my thoughts. How could Chloe do this to me? I was finally happy. After all these years, I had found love and contentment. I should have known it wouldn't last. Happiness wasn't meant for me, and I wouldn't make that mistake again. Everyone I had ever let into my life had eventually betrayed me. Why would this time be any different? I pulled back onto the road, heading to my next job. I would finish my calls, then inform my boss that my past had caught up with me and I had to move on. He would understand. Sheila. Emily was sobbing on my shoulder. I was stunned by Mark's coldness. This was his own child. What she had done was not unforgivable. Teenagers make choices. This was clearly about him and the pain he was still carrying. Mark had always been loving and kind to Olivia and me. This behavior was completely out of character. I helped Emily into the car and drove to my apartment. "You'll stay with me for now," I told her. "This is just the first attempt. I'll talk to him again when he gets off work." I was trying to reassure her, though I wasn't entirely sure of the outcome myself. Mark. When I returned to the boarding house that evening, I expected to find Chloe and Emily waiting for me, but they were gone. In a way, it was a relief, making my decision to leave again easier.
I loved Chloe and Olivia deeply, but now that my past had resurfaced, I felt I couldn't trust Chloe. I began to pack, knowing I would be leaving everything behind. As I was packing, there was a knock on the door. I ignored it and continued, but when the door opened, I knew it had to be Chloe. She leaned against the wall, watching me silently for a moment, before confronting me about my intention to leave. She admitted to speaking with Jenna and finding out everything. She mentioned that her own ex-husband had done the same thing to her, but had simply moved on with his life. I lashed out, pointing out that our situations were not the same. Her betrayal wasn't like mine, not after 18 years of marriage and a daughter who chose to side with the people who had destroyed me. Frustrated, I let years of buried pain pour out, recounting my mother's infidelity, my father's suicide, and the abuse I endured from my stepfather. The scars on my back were a constant reminder of a childhood filled with neglect and violence. "Why did you have to dig all this up?" I demanded. I was finally happy. I had you and Olivia, and I had worked so hard to put the past behind me. Those people are nothing to me now, just shadows of a life I don't want. I was looking forward to the future, and you had to open this can of worms. Why couldn't you just let it be? You had nothing to do with it, and neither did Olivia. Weren't we happy? Chloe explained that she had found out about Emily and felt she needed to understand why I had left her. I could see the fear in her eyes, the fear that if I could walk away from my own daughter, I could just as easily walk out on her and Olivia. It was a valid fear, and it hit me hard. I felt betrayed all over again, this time by the one person I thought I could finally count on. The realization fueled my anger. If you don't trust me, then I'll save you the trouble of worrying about it. I'll be gone by morning. I'm done ruining lives. You can join the club of people who have hurt me. Once I'm gone, you can cozy up to my daughter and the rest of the backstabbers. Maybe they'll come up with new ways to hurt me. But I wouldn't be around for them to mess with anymore, I thought. I had made my point, but all it did was anger her. As I stood there, staring at her, I realized I might just have pushed away the one good thing I had left in my life. Sheila. I had reached my limit with Mark's self-pity and bitterness. I loved him deeply, but I couldn't stand by and watch him destroy everything we had built. He acted as though the world was against him, but the reality was far different. His daughter had dropped everything to see him because she loved him and wanted him in her life. She wanted him to walk her down the aisle and meet his future grandchildren. Even his ex-wife, whom he believed despised him, was simply trying to help their daughter find closure. If Mark wanted to remain in his anger, that was his choice, but I couldn't stay with someone who refused to move forward. I admitted that I was worried he might walk out on me and Olivia, especially after learning he had done it before. But I was ready to understand if only he had trusted me enough to talk about it. Relationships are built on trust, and I had shared my entire life with him, even the parts I wasn't proud of. I had done it because I believed in us and wanted him to take care of me out of love, not necessity. In a moment of frustration, I threw his key at him, hitting him in the chest. He didn't even flinch, which only intensified my anger. I told him he could leave, go back to the empty existence he had lived for 8 years, instead of the life he had with me and Olivia for the past year. If that was what he wanted, fine. But I wanted more, and I had hoped to find it with him. Without looking back, I stormed out, slamming the door so hard the entire building seemed to shake.
As much as I wanted him to chase after me, to beg me to stay, I meant every word. I couldn't be with someone who refused to let go of the past and embrace the love that was right in front of him. Andy. As Chloe slammed the door, I realized I had been wrong. In my attempt to shield myself from the pain of betrayal,
I had pushed away the very people I loved. I didn't want to lose Chloe and Olivia, and I realized this might be my last chance to reconnect with Emily. I knew I had a lot of work to do. I stopped packing and rushed to Chloe's apartment. Seeing her car outside, I knew I had to make things right. I knelt at her door, ready to apologize, and she opened it before I could even knock. I admitted my mistakes, told her how much I needed her, and begged for her forgiveness, promising to do whatever it took. Chloe forgave me, on one condition. I had to make things right with Emily. I agreed, relieved to have a second chance. Inside, Emily was sitting on the couch, her face tear-stained. I knelt in front of her, took her hands, and felt a flood of emotions. I apologized for letting my anger and hurt cloud my judgment. I explained that I had viewed her choice to live with her mother as a betrayal, which had led me to leave. I told her that thanks to Chloe, I finally understood how wrong I had been and asked for her forgiveness. Emily forgave me, explaining that she had never been angry, only sad. She wished I had talked to her before I left, but understood the pain her mother's actions had caused. We embraced, trying to make up for the lost years. Noticing Chloe crying, Emily invited her into our hug, and we shared an emotional moment together. After asking where Olivia was, Chloe brought her in, and I reminded her of my promise to become her new dad. She remembered, and I told her to watch closely. Back in the living room, I helped Chloe to her feet, thanked her for reuniting me with Emily, and proposed. She said yes, and we kissed as Emily and Olivia looked on. Emily corrected me when I referred to them as stepsisters, insisting they would just be sisters. We celebrated with dinner and made plans for a courthouse wedding. That night, I began moving my things into Chloe's apartment. At the wedding, I felt sharp in my tuxedo, and Chloe was stunning in a pink dress that hinted at the beginning of her pregnancy. Emily looked like a princess, and Ethan was beaming as I walked her down the aisle. I had managed to avoid Jenna and Alex, only catching brief glimpses of them during the rehearsal. Jenna had gained a significant amount of weight and was now well over 200 pounds. She had once told someone that life with Alex made her fat and happy. Whether she was truly happy, I didn't know, but the weight gain was undeniable, and a part of me wondered if guilt had played a role. As Chloe and I were chatting with some of Ethan's relatives, I didn't notice Jenna and Alex approaching from behind. Jenna's voice, which I had once found beautiful, now grated on my ears. Any fond feelings I had for her were long gone, but for Emily's sake, I remained civil. As Alex began to speak, I held up my hand to stop him. "Alex, do you remember the last thing I said to you? Nod if you do." He nodded. "My feelings on that matter have not changed." Chloe, sensing the tension, joined him as they walked away, leaving Jenna and me alone for the first time in years. She broke the silence, expressing her surprise that my animosity had lingered for so long. She had hoped we could move past it, perhaps even be friends, now that we had both found happiness in our new lives. She acknowledged my happiness with Chloe and my role as a father to Olivia, something she had recently learned about. I made it clear that any hope she had for reconciliation was misplaced. The intense love I once had for her had been replaced by a deep-seated hatred for both her and Alex. When she asked why I couldn't let it go, I explained the painful truth of my past, my mother's repeated infidelity, her abandonment of me, my father's subsequent suicide, and the years of abuse I endured at the hands of my stepfather. The scars on my back were a constant reminder of a childhood filled with neglect and violence. But that's not the core issue, I told her. The real pain came from the betrayal of the three people I loved most, you, Emily, and Alex. I built my life around you, believing we would grow old together, but your actions destroyed those dreams. Jenna admitted that she had loved me, but not in the same way I had loved her, something she claimed she couldn't control. But for me, I said, the betrayal wasn't just about a romantic connection. It was about the destruction of trust, the sense of betrayal from the two people I relied on most, who conspired to tear apart everything I thought I knew. "Mark, we didn't mean for it to happen," she said. "But you didn't stop it either," I countered. "You pursued what you wanted, without any regard for the consequences. Do you have any idea how hard it was for me to even consider trusting another woman after what you did? Losing you and Alex wasn't enough. You took Emily from me too." "Emily made her own choice," she insisted. "Bullshit," I snapped. "Look me in the eye and tell me you didn't influence her to stay with you. I know what you told her. It'll be strange with Alex here instead of Daddy, but at least I'll still be here after school, and you can see your dad whenever possible. Don't tell me that didn't happen." She couldn't deny it. "You wanted it all, didn't you? Your selfishness destroyed someone who loved and supported you for 18 years. Did you ever consider how that would affect me? Did you ever suggest to Emily that maybe she should live with me so I wouldn't be completely alone?" "You're right, Mark," she conceded. "I didn't think of it like that. But you just disappeared without a word." "What did you expect me to do?" I asked. "My entire family was gone. I was left alone while my wife and daughter lived with the man who replaced me. Did you really think I could stay there and watch my life move on without me, seeing my daughter only a few days a month? I had two options: cut all ties or end my life. And honestly, I was very close to choosing the latter. When I told Mrs. Henderson to tell you I'd see you in hell, I meant it. I even had a gun." Jenna was shocked. "God, Mark, I had no idea." "Of course you didn't. I was too preoccupied with your new life to care. You replaced me, you convinced Emily to stay with you, and you never once checked on me. After the hearing, I told you I'd be gone in a week. I didn't just mean out of the house. I meant dead. And you didn't even bother to ask what I meant. The only reason I didn't end my life was because I hated you and Alex too much to give you the satisfaction." "Mark, I cut her off. I let my anger cloud my judgment with Emily. When she chose to live with you, I assumed she had taken your side and wanted Alex as her father, and I overreacted by leaving without a word. That mistake cost me 8 years that I can never get back. Thankfully, Chloe pulled me out of that dark place, or who knows what else I would have lost. Now I know what it feels like to have someone who genuinely cares about me. Do you understand now why I still hate you?" "I get it, Mark," she admitted. "I had hoped that time would heal things, but it hasn't. I'm sorry for how we handled everything. Can we at least be civil?" "Yes, for our daughter's sake," I agreed. "I'll treat you like a stranger, but make sure Alex never speak to me again, or you'll be a widow." Over the next 2 years, I gradually bought out my boss when he retired, becoming the largest electrical contractor in Crestwood and one of the most successful in the state. While I still took on occasional calls, I mostly managed the business from the office, with my wife Chloe and our 10-year-old daughter Lily on staff. Chloe handled appointments, I managed the staff and projects, and we did the paperwork together. Olivia adored her new baby sister, Katie. A year after our wedding, Ethan received a promotion that took him and Emily to Dallas, a few hours away, but we still see them every month. They're expecting my first grandchild next year. Nothing eventful happened to Alex and Jenna, aside from their significant weight gain. While I have no desire to hear about them, Emily keeps Chloe updated, and Chloe occasionally shares news. Chloe doesn't hold a grudge like I do. She even sends them a thank you card on our anniversary, saying their actions ultimately brought us together.